Hey, y'all, it's your girl, Coach Christal. Welcome to another installment of Wisdom Wednesdays. If you're just joining us, let me welcome you into our community the same way that we start each and every one of our endeavors. It's with our mantra that just says, a lot of things happen before this, and I guarantee a lot of things are going to happen after this, but I promise to be here with you now. Please be here with me now. If you're new to Wisdom Wednesday, I just want to invite you into a space where we get to talk and have candid conversations with some people who have influenced my trail, influenced my path, who I'm inspired by continuously, and some people who I'm just getting to know, but their brilliance has brought me so into tune or alignment with who I am that I want to share them with you. Tonight, our guest was supposed to be Jasmine Barber, and she's had a little bit of a hiccup, but I just want to tell you why we were going to have this conversation with Jasmine. And then I want to tell you a little bit about what it means to build a legacy that includes other people. Now, if you've been watching Wisdom Wednesdays, you've seen people on here who are coaches, people on here who are experts in their field, and they've been moderated conversations where I like to go behind the scenes of not just what they do, but who they are. So let me tell you a little bit about what our guest tonight was going to tell you. Before there was Coach Christal, there was Christal. Before there was Christal, there was Christal Brown. Before there was Christal Brown, there was Jackie's daughter, Reese's sister, and No Legs' daughter. Now, you might not know any of those iterations, but they are all present in exactly who you're talking to right now. Now, what happens is that many of us become experts at who people want us to be, and we forget the other parts of ourselves. One of the parts of myself that I could not forget was a teenage girl who had a lot of questions, and no one wanted to give me real answers. And if you know anything about an intelligent young woman, with even the slightest bit of resources, she will go out and find an answer. So many times I found myself looking for answers in a small town that did not lead me to the best outcomes, if you know what I mean. So when I was in New York City as a dancer, I would see young women on the train or on the subway in the middle of the day around 12:30 or 1 o'clock. And that was because they had gotten done with their curricular activities at school and they could be out of school. They were done with what they needed to do academically. Now, in New York City, they had a unlimited Metro card. And what that meant was they could get anywhere in the 5 boroughs, right, with this unlimited Metro card. And I remember being 16 years old with a driver's license and a pretty decent automobile and skipping school and doing things and being places, but there was only so much I could get to in the little town where I grew up. So I imagined all the things that I did when I was their age. And then I imagined the access they had to New York City. And I thought, oh, wow, they have a lot of questions. Because I remember when I was trying to get my questions answered, there weren't really any trusted adults who would tell me the whole truth. This is way before Google too, right? So it's about 2004. My colleague Paloma McGregor and I, who had been in a dance company in Spirit that I founded years ago, we're looking at these young women and we're like, well, what if we did something for them or created a space where we could be the safe adults and they could ask us questions, we could help them reinvent themselves or invent themselves as they were becoming emerging human beings, and we exposed them to things that weren't a part of their normal environment. And hence, Project Becoming was born through a grant from the Bronx Council on the Arts called Action Lab. And we started this program in a storefront in Hunts Point, in the Hunts Point neighborhood of the Bronx. Now, Project Becoming was based on a 5-strand curriculum. And we started asking these young women, not who do you want to be, what do you want to be when you grow up, but who do you want to be? Right? We started detangling the aspect of getting a badge, like in Girl Scouts, and doing the right thing from who do you really want to be? What's a righteous choice you can make for yourself? And so all these explorations went through body image, fashion, it went through cooking, it went through yoga. We had young women who would come to us and say things like, oh, Miss Christal, my mom's laughing at me because I came home with a yoga mat. And we'd be like, well, it's probably just because she's a little bit afraid, right? So we were able to detangle the parental narratives that were being told in their household and empower them with real information and real experience. Now, fast forward, Project Becoming became a staple of In Spirit, a dance company, and we were a vendor with the New York City Department of Education, which meant that Project Becoming was in every borough of New York City. And then with the help of Amy Meredith Cox, which is where we met Jasmine Barber in New Jersey, we were able to take it over to Rutgers and open it up on the weekends for young women in New Jersey. We then had a chapter that was started in Al Ain, which is in the UAE, by Sanithia Tice, and in Charlotte, North Carolina Carolina. And a year and a half ago during the pandemic, or actually 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, we launched a chapter in Vermont at a middle school. We then, during the pandemic, turned Project Becoming into a self-development box. And there were women, young people from all over the country at colleges, scholars, summer dance programs, diving into this box ages 16 to 67. And they were finding transformation through this 5-question curriculum that still asks the question, who do you want to be? What makes you strong? And then how does that transformative process that you go through about mapping the body and all that it has to tell us, but also mapping the heart and all that it has desired over the years into a question of who am I now? These 5 questions are what have allowed me to get into situations where I can kind of just move the needle a little bit in people's hearts. And Project Becoming is not something that's over. We just launched another chapter in Vermont, up in Lamoille County at a high school. And I'm bringing this up because the legacy of change is something that has been a part of my life and been a part of this work that Coach Christal does for a very long time. Transformation is something that I've been interested in since I was a poor college student who didn't have a lot of money. And so I would buy 1 cup of coffee, sit in Barnes and Noble, and plant myself in the self-development section for hours at a time. This was before people were readily going to therapy. This was before I had my own health insurance plan, all the things that would kind of keep you in the self-development section, right? And so it's been a love of mine to not only see how people transform, but also to understand how people find God, what they call it, what they name it, and how they practice it. The way of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis have been a part of my teaching pedagogy, my coaching practice, and the lifestyle I live. I'm often questioning what is happening right now in this moment, right? Because I want you to be here with me now. I want to know what the past has to teach me. And I want to know what's going to wake me up in the morning to run and desire and work for something in the future. Right now, I am obsessed with my future self, which means that I am taking in all the content of my life as the curriculum for my evolution to find out what it is I've been doing that's teaching me not only who I am, but what are the next steps of this evolutionary process. Now, you might be asking some of the same questions. You may not have found yourself in a situation or a community that you feel safe asking those questions yet. But I want to invite you into this community and know that you can always ask questions. You can always be a part of our community, and that the welcome that you feel is real. We just had our Fear and Forgiveness Masterclass last Saturday, and I was so excited to see so many people there sharing their hearts with a community of strangers. Now, it may sound strange, but the way that you jumpstart your transformation is to introduce yourself to a stranger. Right? It's the way that I actually began to understand that the next stage of my life and my development were going to be as Coach Christal. I was at a dance festival, a really well-known dance festival. And a woman walked up to me as I was talking to one of my colleagues. And so she just started having a conversation. And she said, "So what do you do?" And rather than giving her my resume as a dancing artist in a place where dance was already being celebrated, I took a leap and said, "I'm a coach." And she said, "Oh, what do you do?" I said, "Well, I help people move past traditional success into lives of true freedom." She says, "How do you do that?" And I said, "Well, I focus on vision, because without a vision, you actually don't have a life." And there are a lot of people who are life coaches, but they maybe haven't actually paid attention to their own experience enough to give you a moniker or a methodology for who you can become. And she was like, "Oh, that sounds great. I'll look into that." And right then, y'all, Coach Christal was real. It only takes one person to agree, right? All you kind of old school Bible scholars out there, we know that it only takes one other person to touch and agree, right? For something to be real. But when you understand the power of your voice in action and the power of your intention aligned with your attention, things materialize and become real at a much faster rate. As we think about this idea that Project Becoming, which was something that I thought I was doing to help a community, and really I was, but big picture, right? I was really trying to heal the little girl in me, the adolescent, the 16-year-old who was, out doing things that she had no business doing with no real kind of supervision, the person who wanted to ask big questions and have them answered with the truth. I wanted to heal her, and I wanted to give other young women the opportunity to ask hard questions, to find themselves in safe space before the word safe space became a thing. And I wanted to give them the opportunity to share who they really were rather than try to mimic or pretend that the life that they had been taught to want was the life they really loved. So we have to be really true to who we are supposed to be. And I know that's not easy because there are a lot of voices. There's a lot of things vying for your attention all day long. And something that my coach brought up to me yesterday was, this idea of mimicry, in that we are often mimicking what we think success looks like. We're mimicking what we think womanhood, manhood looks like. We're mimicking what we think parenthood looks like. We're mimicking what we think CEO looks like. But we haven't actually pulled apart the components of that job or that title and said, what about these parts suit my own identity? And what parts of this am I contorting myself to look like I'm doing it right? One of my students from years ago reminds me of the mantra that I gave them: right, wrong, and real. There is a way that we can be right, which means that no one will question our actions. There's a way that we can be wrong, which means we might cause harm. But the only place we can actually thrive is in the reality of who we're meant to be, doing the action with our full authenticity and keeping others from harm when we make choices that are authentic to ourselves. So as we become fully human, which is the process of this life we're living, to become fully human, not to become experts and masters at everything. It is to become fully human with the gifts that we have been born with so that we can become inept, adequate, and fulfilled with all that those gifts have to teach us. When I think about the beginnings of Project Becoming and the evolution of Christal as the educator, the professor, the professional dancer, the coach, the speaker, the writer, I think, okay, at least I know from the beginning that the two things I valued, love and trust, have been a through line with all of those endeavors. This morning, I was asked by a prior client who's an author if I would participate in a reading and a launch of a project that they're coming out with in 2025. And she said, if you read from the page, and I was like, am I reading a page of your work? And she said, no, didn't you just publish a book? You can read a page from your book. And I felt so honored to be able to read from Steps and Stories. But I also thought to myself, wow, this is real. This is a dream that I've had since I was 9 years old, when I used to answer the question of who would you like to be with a writer and an accountant. And people thought, oh, that didn't go together. And people have been thinking that I've been doing a lot of disparate things for many years. But the fractioning or the diasporic way in which my gifts show up is about bringing and making sense of the whole through different means and mediums. So in this time this morning, when I was reading a page from Steps and Stories, I started to just recollect on this part of the story I was telling. And I was thinking about the courage it takes to tell 30 stories about my own past that most people may not say out loud, and being able to offer up my transformation, offer up my vulnerability, offer up my failures, offer up my tears, offer up my transitions for other people as a tool to be able to look at their own lives, to be able to look in a mirror that feels familiar, and to be able to choose and evaluate their past based on, again, who they want to become, is the project of my life. And I'm so excited that as I reflect, as I'm about to have another born day in November, as I'm running up to 45, I'm looking at not just accomplishment for accomplishment's sake. I'm looking at accomplishment, I'm looking at endeavor, I'm looking at energy as the planting of seeds that will not just ensure a harvest for me, but will continue to grow in the lives of other people. That Project Becoming will continue to be a staple in schools, communities all over the country. That people will continue to ask questions and provide safe spaces, not just for young women, but for people to become their highest and fullest selves. And that we continue to take steps and evaluate the stories of our lives, not as a critic, but as a author would look at revisions for their next manuscript. As you are becoming who you are meant to be, it is indeed key to reflect on what you've done, who you've been, and the moments that have given you life. Much of what I learned as a professional dancer was not about steps. It was about community. It was about showing up fully. It was about using exhaustion to get to the next level. It was about believing in someone else's imagination so much that I could bring it into fruition as a truth of my own. And that is a part of the human experience. Many of us have been taught to subvert risk. And as we've been taught to subvert risk, we've been taught to hold ourselves back. We hold ourselves back from failure. We hold ourselves back from friendships. We hold ourselves back from the truth of who we really are. And as we're holding ourselves back, we start to stifle and stuff things down. And if they're clients listening, they already know that one of my favorite things to talk about is this Gospel of Thomas, which says, if you bring forth the thing that is within you, it will save you. But if you don't bring forth the thing that is within you, it will kill you. And as we continue to hold ourselves back, we're dying small deaths each day to the person that we know we should be. And as we're suffocating our dreams, our hopes, our desires, and saying it's because we're being rational thinkers or we're being safe, we're actually telling ourselves that the delay that we're giving permission to is a part of a rational self-doubt. And as we doubt ourselves, we continue to operate in only the right and the wrong. And we miss the reality and the gift of each day that we get to co-create with the divine, with God, with the universe, whatever you'd like to call it. We get to be co-creators, co-conspirators in our own development. And all we have to do is say yes. So as we wrap up this episode of Wisdom Wednesdays, I'm going to challenge each person listening. And if you're listening and you're thinking that this might be applicable to someone else's life, I'm going to encourage you to share it over to them. But I'm going to challenge you in the week that we are apart, and I hope you'll tune back in next week, to say yes to at least one thing that scares you. As you say yes to the one thing that scares you, understand that you are not trying to overcome fear. You are just taking away the importance of fear as a tool for your growth. Fear can be your friend, and fear can be an energy that we use to catalyze our growth. But nothing can change about how we see the things that we're afraid of until we say yes to doing something about that fear, to doing the opposite of pushing back and being safe. We have to say yes and take a small risk. It could be picking up the phone. It could be writing a letter. It could be writing an email. It could be sitting down to try your first hand at meditation. It could be reading a book. It could be anything that's going to push you forward into the growth that you know you would love, but you just might be a little bit afraid of. And really the fear is that you're going to be even greater at it than you can ever imagine. Listen, I believe everything you need, want, and desire is working its way towards you. May nothing stand in your way, and may your yes be so powerful that it not only transforms your life, but the life and the legacies of everyone around you. Hey, y'all, this is Wisdom Wednesdays. Continue to keep following, subscribe on YouTube, let us know what you think. And if you still are interested in a Project Becoming box, you can jump over to crystalbrown.com/shop. And you can also grab your copy of Steps and Stories there, 30 Days of Growth with Grace. Mark your calendars for August 19th for Vision Camp Virtual. We'll see you online or in person. Nice to see you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.